We'd been over in Laos, and we were coming back close to the Hamburger Hill mountain. I didn't get shot at, but he got hit with an RPG in the tail rotor. I went back in as low as I could get. I saw an arm move, so I knew they were alive.
Curious Humanography is proud to partner with Utah Honor Flight, part of the National Honor Flight Network, giving veterans the trip of a lifetime to Washington, D.C. to visit memorials built in their honor. Each flight is free for veterans and made possible by generous donors. To learn more or support their mission, visit utahhonorflight.org and find your local Honor Flight hub at www.honorflight.org. Also, if you'd like to see more stories like this, please support us by subscribing to our channel, liking, commenting on the video, and sharing it with your friends. Your support helps us continue to bring stories that deserve to be heard. Thank you for watching, and now back to our show. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Tell me, let's start with your name.
Ben Thornal, Thornal.
And where are you from? What's your background?
Well, I'm retired from the Army, 22 years. Went in as a private nothing on a Greyhound bus.
Where did you grow up?
Tallahassee, Florida. And just stuck with it.
Okay, get me into, how did you end up in Vietnam?
I'd graduated from college. I was in Mexico, wasting time and money. I got a telegram from my father that said, "Son, your draft number is up and you need to come home." And I really thought about it. There are a lot of folks that went to Nicaragua that didn't have extradition. And there are a lot of people that ran to Canada. And I thought about it. And I thought either I couldn't come back. I thought you'd be arrested for sure if you did. And I thought that I shouldn't come back. I thought if I turned my back on the country when I was asked to serve, that I didn't deserve to live there. So I came back, and I went down to the recruitment office, and you want all that about
Yeah, absolutely.
First, I went to the Coast Guard recruiter, and he said, "Do you have a family member who is a high-ranking Coast Guard officer?" And I said, "No, sir, I don't." He said, "Do you have a family member that's a member of Congress?" And I said, "No, I don't." He said, "Well, the waiting list," I think he said it was about 8 years. So I went, I can't remember, the Navy and the Air Force was kind of the same deal. I mean, you didn't have days. They couldn't say, yeah. So the Army and the Marine recruiter were on the other side of the room. And I elected to go visit with the Army recruiter. "Glad to see you." So I enlisted, and for 3 years, and got in, and it was competitive, and I liked it. And anyway, I did well. One of the more important things that I received in the military was an award for the outstanding trainee in A-10-5, which was a training company. And then I went on to Advanced Individual Training, AIT, and that went well. And then I got into OCS, Officer Candidate School, and it was not easy. They washed out 50%. They told us they would, and they did. And they told us that we would be in Vietnam within 2 weeks after we busted out of OCS. Some guys didn't bust out. They just said, phooey.
What camp was that at? Where were you at when you did that, the OCS?
Fort Knox, Kentucky.
And what did the training consist of for that? How long was that?
Oh, gosh. I think it was 6 months, but I'm not sure. And they trained you in all kind of things. The one thing I do remember about it was they would low crawl us. I mean, it seemed like miles, but they would quit low crawling us on like a Thursday, so that on Friday, when we had parades and parents would be there, we wouldn't bleed through our uniforms. That's true. And we couldn't go back. We could low crawl, go back and help a buddy, but you couldn't go back and just walk back and help him. And it was a great experience, a lot of camaraderie. We had a man in our class that had a wife and a child, and he just couldn't afford to stay in. I mean, they pay you as a Spec 5, but you used all of it on equipment and stuff that you needed and had to have. And anyway, we knew he was getting ready to drop out, and we got together as a platoon and gave him money every month so he could stay in. And it's things like that where I've gotten word that of our year group, 10% made it through the war. And we hit right at a real active spot in the war, So anyway, I did that, and then they kept me there for 6 months as a TAC officer. And then I had a choice. I could go to Ranger School or I could go to flight school. And I really wanted to go fly. I'd lived in a BOQ with a bunch of warrant officers, and we were buddies, and they really wanted to go fire a tank. And I can make that happen. And then I asked them, I said, I'd like to go for a flight in a helicopter. And they said, we can do that. And I got in a D model Huey. It's strapped in the gunner seat on the door. I knew they were going to pick up and go forward and climb to some elevation, and they didn't. They backed out. And I thought that was the coolest thing I had ever seen. And I was hooked. And we flew to Bowling Green and back. And, anyway, I was scheduled to go to transportation OCS, and I went and I selected flight school and went to just west of Fort Worth, I don't know, Midland. It was a primary flight school in the middle of nowhere, Texas. And the So that was interesting. I started flying TH-23s, which were like on MASH. You see them on MASH. And we didn't stay in those long. Then we went to a TH-55, which is like a rotor strapped on a lawnmower. and yeah, it was a good education.
How long before you were going solo there? And what was that like?
I can't remember the time. They would determine when you'd go solo. It was a big deal just when you could hover by yourself. And we did that pretty quickly. And then you do solo flights and get used to navigation instruments and that type thing. And then they'd turn you loose on solo flights. And then you did one night cross-country solo. And for instruments, we had an ADF, an automatic direction finder. And that was basically you'd tune in radio stations in the town you were going to, and it would track you right there, and then you go to the next one. It gets dark in Texas at night when you're out there, and you see these little tiny cities. I mean, they were almost like a parking lot. And anyway, finished basic flight school, and then went to Fort Rucker, Mother Rucker, for advanced, transitioned into the UH-1 Hueys, and did that with more instruments, different aircraft, different everything.
Did you like that aircraft?
The Huey?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a great old aircraft. And it's like flying a big duck, I mean, compared to other things, in my opinion, they were great aircraft. And I did well in advanced, and I graduated, and they sent me to transition into the OH-6 with the Loach. And I did. And I thought that was really neat. I had very little idea of what their real mission was.
Describe that aircraft for me.
It's like an olive with a toothpick in the back of it. It's a 4-place aircraft. It has a Allison turbine engine. It's got tons of power. It's very, very maneuverable. And the frame is like a roll cage. They were quite survivable when you went down. They would roll. They could carry a minigun. In Vietnam, my preference was not to carry a minigun. They were heavy. The sights on them were kind of a general area type thing. And so I'd much rather have the less weight, more maneuverable, doing that. And then I went from, they kept me there as, I went to IP school, instructor pilot school, in that aircraft. And then I was sent to Fort Campbell, Kentucky, where our aircraft troop was forming up. They had never seen an OH-6. They came in on 141s in the Campbell, and the maintenance officer put them together, which was basically putting the rotor and tail rotor and a few things on. And then he did the maintenance acceptance flight. And then I did the Army acceptance flight. And then we started training. And I trained all the pilots in the platoon. And I spent a lot of time strapped to that aircraft. And the maintenance officer and I one time had a contest shooting auto rotations into the hangar to see how close we could get our left skid to a Coke bottle. And we could get really close. Anyhow, we formed up the aircraft troop.
And you're okay at this point. You're deciding the strategy of how you're going to use the Loaches over in Vietnam at this point. Would that be fair to say, or no? You were just training people to fly them at this point.
We had IPs that had flown. I guess they flew TH-13s in Vietnam doing reconnaissance, and it was a totally different game than a Loach. I mean, we were faster, more maneuverable, all kind of things. And they would tell us a lot of experiences, but most of them had been there and they had received fire, but not like we did in 69. And so, and their aircraft weren't near as maneuverable as the 086. And they taught us what they knew. A lot of it was OJT. When we replaced a aircraft troop that was sent to the first Cav, and the platoon leader that I replaced took me on an orientation flight of the Ashaw, which was our area of operation. And I could tell he was a little nervous. But anyway, he generally showed me around from altitude. And coming back, our gun, the Cobra, got hit. He took one right through the tail boom. It didn't hit the tail rotor shaft. And we talked and went back to a rearm refuel point. And I wanted to go over there and look at that. And it was about the size of your thumb where the round went in. And it was about the size of a watermelon where it came out. It gets your attention. It's a 51 caliber. And it was amazing. And
okay, tell me when you ended up in Vietnam then. So you did
March
the training
of 69.
Okay.
Early 69.
And what was that like touching down in Vietnam?
I really didn't know what to expect. Long flight going over. I don't know what other people thought. I thought, if they're flying commercial aircraft in there, it couldn't be that bad. And what really gets you is the heat and the humidity. And it just like slams you right in the face, getting off an air-conditioned flying Tiger for 21, 24 hours. And
where'd you land there?
Cameron. We were attached to the 101st, and 101st was not allowed in Saigon. Somebody well before us had gone in there and partied. Anyway, so at Cameron, we kind of got oriented, and we were supposed to fly out the next day to go to our permanent location, which was a Camp Evans. And they came in and hang on, let me get my water.
Yep.
They came in and they said, well, there's going to be a delay. All your hooches got blown down last night in a rocket attack. And anyway, we were there for a few days. And then they said, there's a change. We're going to Camp Eagle, which was, we didn't know Sikkim from come here, but Eagle was a lot bigger. And so we flew in there. Got the aircraft, and it took a while to get settled. Our vehicles, 2.5 ton, 5 ton. I think we only had 1 5-ton, but in Jeeps and stuff to get in. And so the troop commander sent me down to Da Nang to get the vehicles. And no problem, had no idea what I was getting into. And we got our vehicles. We got all formed up. There was a MP captain that ran these convoys. We had to go through the Haivan Pass. And he said, normally we'll get hit. But he said, if you get hit, and all things being equal, just let the vehicle behind you hook up and push you the rest of the way. And while we were forming up, the Mamasans, the middle-aged Vietnamese women, all kind of little kids running all around talking to the GIs. And they would do all kind of things. These kids were trained to turn on your headlights, anything, to run down the batteries and stuff. And guy came up, one of the troops, and he said they stole my camera. And he didn't know. He said it was one of those little kids. And so the troop commander went over and got the Mamasans together and said, I want this camera back. And they were all, no bic. I don't speak English. And so that captain, he wasn't kidding. He picked up one of those little kids and he said, I'm taking him to Hue and I'm going to sell him and give the kid the money for the camera or either get my camera back. And boy, there was a huddle of the Mamasans and like 100 bumblebees in a Dixie cup. Then finally one of them walked out with the camera. He put the kid down and then we were on our way. And anyway, it was, we didn't get hit. I had my Jeep engine quit. 5-ton right behind me. And he just, hang on. And he pushed me all the way to the top of the Ivan Pass. And then I coasted all the way down to the other side and then got it straightened out. And from there on, went to Eagle. And
what was Eagle like? Describe that place.
Pentaprime. It's the first thing that comes to my mind. It's like a liquid asphalt, but it's not. It's on hot days, it's sticky. Mm-hmm. And it was big. It had several artillery batteries with it. We had where we were on the perimeter, and then next to us was an armored cav unit. And then there were units, all the way around. It was probably 3/4 of a mile in diameter. And they had everything, they had everything. We had electricity, generators, and a lot of maintenance stuff. And it was nice. They had a PX and no commissary. The Army, the food that I experienced in Vietnam was good when we were at Eagle. When we were in the field, we got sea rations. They were left over from Korea. I didn't think they were bad. A lot of guys thought they sucked, but I didn't. And I, for whatever reason, like beans and limas. No, ham and limas, what it was. And people would come up and just give them to me. Sometimes they'd want to trade for the cigarettes or something in there, but I didn't think they were bad. The guys listening to this, if they were in Vietnam, they probably think I'm a little off balance, but it wasn't bad. The food, the mess halls were good. They fed us well.
How often were you going out in the field? Would you do the sea ration thing?
We would not remain overnight in the field. They would have just, North Vietnamese would have just loved that. But we would go out, you'd be gone all day and lunch or supper or whatever, and they would issue these sea rations. And you could take them, and there was a can for
the sterno?
No, it was a can for the little wafers. They were like Ritz crackers, but not nearly as good. And you could dump those out, and I'd take rocks, little gravel, and put it in that can, and take the top off. And underneath our aircraft was a drain for the fuel tank, and I would drain a little diesel in there, and then we'd go light it, and you could heat up whatever you were going to eat, and you brought your own water with you. And so for me, the sea rations were not bad. It's easy to complain about Army food, and I'm telling you my experience, but the mess halls were good, and we were fed good food, and that was great.
What was the day-to-day like there on missions, and talk about that now?
Well, nights were a little different depending on what was going on. You just get used to the artillery going off. we were right on the perimeter, and the North Vietnamese would come in close, and they'd send. They had people that they just have on loincloths and about a 14-inch stick. Now, we had all kind of barbed wire, all kind of concertina wire, and among it were fugas and claymores. And those little boogers could sneak up on you. And they would lift up a wire and then lift up the other one and just come under them. If they got in, they'd try to kill the perimeter guards. That didn't happen often. But if they got caught, a claymore would talk to them, and they would leave. My day missions. They were different. Not every mission was the same. A lot of times, we would go cover troops in contact, and my job basically was to find out where our friendlies were perimeters, and the Cobras did all the work. And then sometimes it was just straight recon, going out and find. We were close to. There was a river, which was Vietnam and Laos boundary, and the Ho Chi Minh Trail came very close, and so we were always trying to locate the bad guys, and that could get touchy. I mean, you want me to talk about the chickens?
Sure.
The North Vietnamese would bring chickens with them, so they'd get fresh eggs. And I never shot a chicken that I didn't get fired up. The North Vietnamese were disciplined, and you go shoot one of their chickens and they couldn't stand it. And they would open up. And you did all kind of different things. I mean, on Hamburger Hill, I marked the first landing zone on Hamburger Hill.
And how would you mark that?
Well, I didn't really mark it. What happened? They put in 3 arc lights, 352 strikes, which the bombs covered about the size of a football field, but they made them contiguous, and they came in. They told me I had to stay at least a mile away, and I was, and my aircraft shuddered so bad I couldn't read the instruments. And then after the arc light, fast movers, normally Air Force, F-4s came in and did daisy cutters, because a lot of these teak trees were hard to knock down. And then they did artillery. And then the last of the artillery, they fired Willie Pete's white phosphorus rounds, which really marked the landing zone. And we couldn't get near it until they had marked it. And then just no Cobra, just an 086 wingman. And I went in and touched down our skids and broke radio silence with a division commander and said, the LZ is green. And then our job was just, they gave us a choice. We could go hold over Laos or go back and hold over the Ashaw. And it's the biggest fleet of helicopters. It was bigger than a flight school graduation. And they borrowed aircraft from the Americal, from everywhere. And then I turned around and saw them coming, and it was massive.
How many would you guess, would you say?
I don't know.
All Hueys, or are they mixed?
They were all Hueys that I saw.
And they're going to drop guys in there.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
And after we got out of there, on the troop radio, I talked to my wingman, and I said, did you see anything? I said, I didn't see anything. He said, yeah. He said, I saw some in the wood lines around there. They were bleeding from their ears. And they were in such shock. They never fired when they were bringing in the troops, which I was very grateful for. And then we went. We could do all kind of missions. We had the 1st ARVN Division just north of us, and they were good. There were a lot of ARVNs that weren't good, but the 1st ARVN Division were good, and they kept getting shelled from just the edge of Laos or inside of Vietnam. And we got a mission to go fly the gun target line. They would try to figure out from crater analysis. And they wanted us to get on the gun target line to see if we could see where they fired from. We had special forces guys out in the weeds. I mean, we knew they were there. We never saw them. And they got on their communication line, and they could tell us when the guns were on tracks in a cave. And they could tell us when they rolled out, and we would take off and try to figure out where the gun target line was. And we could never find them. We never did. So, the targets are all different. Basically, there were an aircraft troops there to recon, to go out and find the enemy. And we did a lot of that. We did.
And that's when you go out with the Cobra, right?
No, I was in a Loach. I was always in a Loach.
No, I mean the Cobra was with you, though.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, describe that for people, how you would fly and do that kind of operation.
Well, we were low. After a while, we would slow down quite a bit.
What's low? Would you guess?
Sometimes we would hover over a creek bank to look at sandals. They'd made flip-flops out of truck sandals, truck tires. I mean, you could do that. Normally, you first went in relatively fast. Not too fast where you couldn't see anything, but hopefully they'd miss you if that, and then you'd slow it down on different runs, and do that. And the Cobras were normally well behind us and about 800 feet up, and their job was to break us loose when we got engaged. and you'd get to know the gun pilots, and if you'd move wrong, he'd light up everything underneath you. That's save your backside.
So was he waiting for you to talk to him, or he could see when somebody?
I talked to him all the time.
Well, would he see when somebody's firing on you, and then you'd pull out and he would go after them? Is that how it generally was?
Yeah, he would see. I'd be talking to him, not all the time, but all I had to do was just push my button for a hot mic, and he was there. And he would know from the way I was flying that I was taking fire. And then he took it from there. On Hamburger Hill, after it was over, and they were trying to rebuild some of their bunkers, and these bunkers were big. They had teakwood tree overhead covers and firing slits and all. And so anyway, we went back in to make an assessment of how many men they had up there and what they were doing. And the first thing they did, they killed our Chuhoy. He was a Vietnamese that had surrendered and was willing to help and translate. And they were trying, the blue platoon grunts were trying to get up close to the bunker, and they were talking to them. I mean, and then they killed our Chuhoy. And the troop commander he said, kill everybody on the ground. And that's what we started to do. And I had a crew chief at that time that could put a grenade in a mailbox from 100 feet and moving. And so we were trying to, and he got a white phosphorus grenade to land on top of one of these bunkers. And it caught on fire. And so we were trying to make another run and go in there. And we had a lot more than one gunship. And the guns started, get out of the way. You know, they couldn't shoot because we were too close. And I saw a guy turned a minigun on him, and he, pink mist. The man disappeared. He just disappeared. And they did a good job of taking everything else out that was there. There were so many different kinds of missions. We were doing some good stuff in Laos, and Ted Kennedy, bless his heart, stopped it. We couldn't fly over the border. But anyway.
How often were you flying? Every day? Pretty much, or no?
Yeah. I wasn't flying every day. We'd rotate it, and, we'd keep aircraft on station when troops were in contact, or when they had some kind of what the intel guys were trying to figure out. And sometimes we'd have a mission, the Air Force would put in a big strike before we got stopped over in Laos in this big valley. I'll never forget it. I didn't take my crew chief. We didn't take the Cobra, nothing. And they wanted a bomb damage assessment. And I went in.
You went by yourself?
Yes.
Because
there was a C&C aircraft above me, way above me. And went in, and man, it was like Disneyland on the 4th of July. I mean, stuff coming from both sides of that valley, and I was moving. And I got through.
Was this at daytime?
Yes.
And you were getting tracers coming at you, or?
Yes.
Wow.
All kind of things. And anyway.
Hold on. In that moment, are you thinking you're going to get hit? What's going through your head when you're doing that?
I was thinking, who was stupid enough to send us on this mission? They should have, it was probably some Air Force intelligence officer in Denying or somewhere thinking, oh, let's have them go take a look.
Did you get hit?
I did not. They came close. But I didn't. I called a C&C and I said, that's it. I'm not going through there again. You can report they do still have ammunition. And
tell me the story. You said the story of the Cobra that got shot down and the Dustoff that came in and dropped the medic down in there.
Yeah, he
started the beginning of that story.
Well, sometimes you just get creative, and we've been over in Laos, and there were some huge grass huts and all kind of things, and we went over there just looking around, and we were coming back, and we were coming back close to the Hamburger Hill mountain. And it's so dumb. Don't ever do the same thing twice. And we'd been there the day before. And anyway, we came cruising back through low level, and he was low. And I didn't get shot at, but he got hit with an RPG in the tail rotor. And it's a very awkward type feeling. Your nose down and to the left, you're trying to fly. And anyway, he went in spinning. And the teak trees were at least 100 feet tall. And I went back in, and as low as I could get, and I could tell I saw an arm move and then another one, and so I knew they were alive, and I called for the Dustoff, and they're fairly quick. The problem was that were firing at us were up on much higher ground on the mountain, and it came down and then dropped off and then came back out. And I'd known from going back in there, they were firing. I could see tracers well above me, but they couldn't depress low enough to get me. And so I told the Dustoff, I said, this is where he is. And he had visual contact with me. And I said, if you'll follow me, and I'll go in first. And there are going to be tracers above you, well above you. But I'll get you right to the aircraft. And so he did. I mean, gutsy. And a medic, or whoever he was, had cojones the size of grapefruit. But he rode that jungle penetrator down, and he was able to strap up the first pilot, and they hoisted him up, and then they dropped it. He had to stay on the ground, and then they dropped it, and they hooked up the second pilot, and they were busted up. And then he had to stay there while the second one went up. And then they sent the penetrator down for him. And then he came up. And, that's the kind of stuff it's really laying it out there. And I always wanted to go find that crew, but I couldn't. They were over near, I'm not sure where they were. But had to be near the evac hospital.
You don't even know what happened to that crew then.
No, I don't. I wanted to go tell them how much I thought of them. But I just couldn't.
Yeah.
I mean, you're not jotting down tail numbers and stuff with that kind of stuff going on. And
so how often would you say you were flying solo and with another guy, and how was that arranged, and what made you decide what to do with what?
Normally, I'd take an observer, and that could have been a crew chief or one of the blue platoon guys. And, they would have like a machine gun out the window and throw grenades and stuff. But mostly it was another set of eyeballs. And we didn't often take three. We just didn't. And that's what we do.
And how you were 28 when you were doing this?
Yeah.
When you were over there?
Yeah. I was an old guy.
You were you were the statesman of the group?
I don't know if I was a statesman. But relationships are a little bit different in combat. And I was well respected, but I got along with them really well. I had everybody was so stupid crazy about marijuana, and my 2 cents was I'd much rather have a crew chief or people working on my aircraft that had been smoking the night before than somebody that had been boozed up out of their mind and were hung over. And I had an area that smokers, you go there. Drinkers, they had a little club, and you go there. And I'm not going to either one of them.
What percentage would you say? Was it pretty high?
That smoked?
Yeah, well, just the marijuana and all the stuff on the... Would you say it was pretty high? Was it pretty open on the base or no?
I don't know, because I stayed in my troop area.
Yeah.
We weren't walking around, and then people weren't just loose stupid about where they were smoking.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that a lot of them were smoking. But I really can't tell you what percent. A lot of them were drinking.
And what was apparently, you obviously had a lot of respect for the people working on the helicopters and guys you're with.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody had to have each other's back, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Did the base take rockets very often and mortars? Let's hear that story.
Yes, we didn't take them real often, but there were the mountains that were leading into the Ashaw Valley. They would, the North Vietnamese would come up on those ridge lines, and it would take them a while to set up. And these were like 122 millimeter rockets, big ones. And we would fly last light flights across those ridges, and the rockets wouldn't be, but the launchers, they would try to set up the launchers. And they didn't hit us. They hit us on a regular basis, but it wasn't. I'd say a couple of times a month, because they had to carry those things down from North Vietnam. And Bob Hope came. We were as far forward as they would let him go. And he came in with the gold diggers. They were dancers.
Okay.
They were good dancers. and I was, it was great. I got to see him for a little bit of the show. It was really neat. I mean, guys were going over to the medical units, and they'd have buddies, and they'd bring them on hand litters. A couple of them had IVs running.
They were there watching the show.
Oh, yeah.
That's great.
Yeah. They had a place down front for them. And, but they had so many, they had fast movers, they had helicopter gunships, all over those ridge lines.
They were locking the place down, right?
Oh, yeah. They didn't fire. There was, but if they had, good luck.
Tell me the story. Was it in the morning when you went up to take a leak and the guy started shooting at you? Or?
It was.
Tell me that start of that story.
It was on the 4th of July, 1969. And I had gotten up early. I had a mission that we do a first light recon of the perimeter of Eagle. And I had a requirement and an aircraft to go do the first light recon, and I was up just making sure that they'd gotten off and were doing that. And so there was a big berm. We were just behind this huge berm, and I walked on top of the berm, and they had what was fondly referred to as a piss tube. It was a ceramic 6-inch pipe that was angled and went down into the ground. And I was up there addressing the piss tube. And I had on OD boxer shorts and an OD t-shirt and flip-flops, cheap flip-flops. And I was doing my business. And there were some North Vietnamese that had come in. There were probably about 4 of them with a water buffalo and a base plate for a mortar. and they came in close at night, and they would get away with what they could. And one of them, and they weren't, maybe about 300 yards out. For a reason known only to them, one of them squeezed a bunch of rounds off of his AK because I was up there silhouetted, and they thought, we'll kill that guy. Well, it's like the movies. I mean, the rounds were falling around, kicking up dust, and man, I was flip-flopping down off that berm, everything going. And then there was a armored cav troop next to us. They were the only place on the perimeter that had a drop-down fence where they could get, I think it was one vehicle at a time, but they could get out, and they heard what was going on, and they fired up, and they were set up to take care of that kind of thing. And I think they took like 2 APCs with 50s mounted on them, and they went after them. And our mess sergeant, a lot of people came out. I mean, a lot of noise going on. And our mess sergeant started serving people breakfast on paper plates to go out and sit on the berm and watch the armored cav troop do their stuff. And they did. They killed them all. and we sat there. Happy 4th of July. And that's what we did. And, people thought about it, but it wasn't routine, but it wasn't any big deal.
That's wild.
That
is a wild story.
Yeah.
Tell me the first time, the story about the first time you flew back in and everyone was gone because the donut dollies were there on. Tell me that story.
Okay. I'd come in from the Ashaw to rearm, and on our flight line, I mean, usually all the crew chiefs and maintenance and everything was down there, and there wasn't nobody there. And I thought, what's going on? And it bothered me. And I was running up towards the mess hall, and my platoon sergeant, great man, he came running down. He said, Captain, it's okay. It's okay. He said the troop commander approved it, and they're all up in the mess hall playing games. I said, you're kidding. No. and that's the first time I ever knew anything about donut dollies.
And you didn't go see him?
No.
You were mad?
I was. There was a shooting war going on. And the men were up there playing games with the troops. It just seemed out of perspective to me.
But this story takes a turn later on.
It does.
Tell me that story.
Well, about Diane.
Yeah. I
was partway through my tour. I'm going to get some water.
Oh, absolutely.
And they needed a standardization instructor pilot on 086s and Hueys, which I was both at that time. And they formed a division flight standardization outfit. There were me, Airborne Harry Schuler, who was a W3, and a Major, Snyder. And anyway, we were sent there to get the accident rate cut down, stupid stuff. And the first day I got there, I walked into the division mess hall, and there were, I can't remember if there were 4 or 6. I think 6.
I think you said 6 before.
Yeah, Red Cross donut dollies. And
that must have been quite a sight, having been out there for as long as you were.
Oh, yeah. I mean, wow. So I went over and sat in amongst them. And I sat across from the cutest one. And they were all cute. And anyway, we talked through lunch. And one of the things we talked about was some of the things that you couldn't get from the PX. And we were at the tail end of the supply line. Everybody smelled like right guard. That's what you got. Everybody had to drink PBR, Pabst Blue Ribbon. No Coors Light ever got that far north. And so Diane and I were visiting about that. And she said, she'd looked all over for a can of Arid Extra Dry deodorant. And I had gone down to Cameron on Army business, and I'd gotten several cans, 2 of Arid Extra Dry. And we went outside, and I said, wait here a minute. And I ran over to my hooch, and I got one. And I presented it to her on behalf of General Zace, the entire 101st Airborne Division, and myself. And boy, howdy, that's the best money I ever spent. And she loved it. And anyway, that was the introduction to how we met and doing that.
And how much later were you married?
Well, we didn't get married till we got home.
Yeah. And how long had you been out when you met her?
She remembers it differently than I do. I think it was about halfway through my tour. And so then we met. And talk to her about the rest of it.
I will. That's quite a story.
It is. She's not afraid of anything. I mean that seriously. She was.
And at that point, you kind of thought you were going to be a confirmed bachelor, didn't you?
Oh, I definitely planned on it. So many women in such little time. And I just fell slap dab, head over heels, gaga, stupid, crazy in love. And I really had no intention of doing that, but one of those things you can't help. And when it happens to you, it happens to you. And,
any other stories of interest that you want to talk about when you were flying? That you have mechanical things or anything that sticks out in your mind?
I never got hit personally. My aircraft got hit a lot. We had a maintenance sergeant who I'd come in, and one time he said, "Captain, you think these aircraft are disposable?" And I said, "Listen, I'm inside these aircraft." He was upset. A lot of bullet holes. And one time I got shot through my high pressure fuel line. I didn't get shot through it, but it was about 1.25 inches diameter, filled with, there was a mesh in that. Inside that mesh was a copper tube, high pressure, that was about as big as the tip of your little finger. And I took a round that creased that copper tube. He delighted in showing me that. And I took hits all over the place. I took one in the transmission. I took one, but it didn't. I got it on the ground before we ran out of transmission fluid. I got hit by an RPG, and it was the day that we took Hamburger Hill. I came around. Amazing. There was this NVA soldier in a spider hole, just spider hole, covered up with grass and stuff. Had an RPG. He stood up. I saw him, and I'm coming from here, and he's out shooting like that. He fired a round at me, and it's so fast that you don't have time to react. And I had pretty good reactions. And it hit. I was training a new replacement pilot for the platoon, and it hit. At that time, they were point detonated. Later in the war, they came up with proximity fuses, and those were deadly. But anyway, it was point detonated, and it came across, and it hit in the chin bubble, at an angle, and it cracked the chin bubble and went by, and then slipstream right down the aircraft. And pilot I was training, I'll never forget this. The Cobra took that guy out, but we went back to the refuel point, and by the time we got there, he was smoking with both hands. He had one lit in each hand, and he became a good pilot, but it was his first day of OJT. And
did you think that was it when you saw that thing coming at you? Or no, you just didn't have time to react?
You don't really have time to think.
Yeah.
People ask, were you afraid? And we used to talk about it, and afraid just isn't the right word. But it doesn't happen when you're in contact. I mean, it's like cowboys and Indians. And it doesn't happen when things are going on. You're moving fast, all kind of stuff. And you don't get upset about it until later, and you think about it. And a lot of times things were in less than an inch of you being popped.
That's interesting. Okay, you finished up. You came home. Where did you land when you came home? Tell me that story. The day you left. That's a good story. That's another good story.
I came home, and I was to depart out of Cameron Bay. And Cameron had been hit with rockets the night before, and they'd blown out a couple of the big generators. And, you know, these processing NCOs, they said, well, you can walk over to the airfield, but we're not sending a vehicle because of the lights. And so there were a number of us that picked up our duffel bags and we walked, and I don't know, maybe a mile, maybe not that far, but we got over there, and it was a Flying Taggers contract, and we got on the plane and closed the doors. The pilot cranked, and I was in seat 7A. Never forget it. Turned this little knob up in the ceiling, and clean, cool air was coming out of there. I thought, oh, man, you made it. And then they did another rocket attack, and we had to evacuate the plane, emergency evacuation. And we ran over and jumped in the nearest ditch and looked behind us, and there were 10,000-gallon fuel bladders for the Air Force. And there was a Air Force young enlisted kid that had a pistol. He was guarding the aircraft. And three of us had a discussion about taking him down and getting the pistol. He didn't know what to do with it. But it wasn't long, and they blew the all clear. And man, we got back on that plane, and I thought that pilot was going to take off on the taxiway. He turned, and when we cleared 1,500 feet, all kind of shouts went up because we were out of small arms range. And I rode that beauty all the way back to it was McCord Air Force Base. They've combined Fort Lewis and McCord Air Force Base, but it was McCord Air Force Base. And I flew back in there.
What was that like landing in the States for you?
Well, number one, there's a sense of relief, for sure. And it was great to see Diane and her parents that were there. And I'll tell you the things that really got my attention when I first got back was to walk in a supermarket, and a huge, big supermarket, and to see such plenty of everything. And it was that, and just being in cars on an interstate going up to Seattle, and so many. I hadn't run into any civilians at that point, and that was not good. But anyway, that's what I felt.
And had you decided at that point you were going to make a career out of the Army?
At that point, No, I decided that after about 12 years in the Army total. And, the peacetime Army, Air Force, Marine Corps, Navy is different. And you don't have the mission, you don't have so much that's different. And it was at 12 years, and I was talking to Diane. I said, I'm not enjoying this. And Diane said, look, you have been in 12 years. You got 8 years to go. You can do that standing on your head. We had all kind of friends that a lot had stayed in, a lot had gotten out. And she understood it better than I did. I am so grateful that we stayed in, and just for the medical benefits, it's been great. And then I went into some more interesting jobs. I became a tank company commander and some other things that were really interesting and good. I enjoyed.
Well, I feel like you found I thought it's interesting that you really found your place in the military, right? At boot camp.
It was good to me and good for me.
Yeah.
It really was. And when I went through basic, it was just like a World War II. There were guys from Philadelphia that talked funny, and there was farmers from Oklahoma and kids from New Jersey. You had the whole mix that you'd see in a World War II movie. And it was competitive. It was good. I liked it. You knew what the rules were. So, yeah, I get it, and I did. I really liked it. I liked so much about it. There were people you could trust. And back then, if senior NCO or an officer said something, you could take his word. And that was good. That changed a lot over 22 years, but.
And the copters, it seems like you found like something you really loved and you were born to fly. Kind of, do you feel that way?
Flying helicopters, it's below sex, but it's above lobster. It's right in there. Yeah, I just absolutely loved flying. I did. But when I was done, I was done. I mean, after I retired, a lot of guys, whatever they were doing, have a hard time letting go. It wasn't a problem for me. I was into all kind of other things, and Diane and I were. And so when it was time, I let it go.
Okay, looking back now, your experience in Vietnam, how do you place that in your mind, and for you, what's your takeaway from all that, your experiences?
Mixed. My crew chief was sitting closer to me than you are, took a round through the head and bled out before I could get him anywhere. The other side of that was that I met my wife in Vietnam, and that's a great love story. Still is. And so it's a mixed bag.
You were telling me the other day that some of these memories have coming back now that you're older.
Well, I have PTSD. I go to the VA. It's for me. It was just a lot of memories that would come back. That you didn't. It would happen at night. Late at night, and you didn't know whether you were terrified or glad to be alive or sad because of the friends that weren't alive. And if anybody's out there listening to this, if you got a problem, go to the VA. The medication that I still take was really helpful. I had a counselor. She still is. She was a clinical psychologist with a PhD. She'd worked with teenagers, and she was in the VA system up at the University Hospital for 10 years. And then she needed a change, so she came to the VA. They're good. I'm telling you, they're good. And if you got problems, go talk to them. It'll help. It'll help.
Well, you have lived an interesting life, my friend.
It has been. It's been good.
Well, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing. Those are great stories. Thank you for your service and all you did over there.